Hey guys, Justin here. So you want to get into winter camping, but you're not quite sure what gear you need. Well, today we're going to go over all of the gear that I bring on winter camping trips. I live in the Canadian Rockies. Temperatures usually get well below freezing, and the gear that we're going to go over today gets me down to about minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit, or even colder if you go by survival ratings. I know this gear is pretty expensive, but there are some budget options included as well. Luckily, a lot of retailers have really big sales at the end of November, so it's a great time to be picking up winter gear. I'm gonna have links in the video description for all of the gear that I talk about today, making sure that I'm linking websites that do have great November sales. As well, I'm gonna talk about how I pack my gear for backpacking trips in the winter, because I think that's a really important factor that's often overlooked. First up, let's talk about the pack. And I have here the Mountain Hardwear AMG 75 pack. In the summertime, I usually use a 40 liter or 55 liter pack, but in the wintertime, I'm bringing more gear, and that gear is a little bit bulkier. As well, the AMG 75 carries weight really, really well. This thing can carry 40, probably even 50 pounds really comfortably. It's a bit more packed than most people would need, but for me, it works really well because it has a couple features that are essential for me for winter backpacking, including a separate pouch for avalanche gear. I travel in avalanche country sometimes when I'm on trips, and it's important to have Avi gear with you, as well as it has loops on the hip belt here for carabiners if you're doing glacier travel. Talking about tents, I don't have my tents packed in my pack right now. I have them set up behind me, and I have two different tents. The first one I'm going to talk about is the Nemo Tenchi. The Nemo Tenchi is another one of those super technical pieces of gear. It's a mountaineering tent and has a lot of features that make it very capable in the wintertime. It has a great vestibule with snow skirts here to prevent wind from blowing snow inside your vestibule. As well, it has external poles, which makes it a little bit easier to set up in the wintertime. And then as well, it has a lot of guy out lines and really good guy out systems, so that if you are in a really windy, stormy, blizzardy situation, you can lock your tent down really securely. One of my favorite features that this tent has that I haven't seen on any other tent is a condensation curtain. So there's a curtain that drops down at the head of the tent, and that curtain blocks your breath from going into the main body of the tent and keeps all the condensation limited to one area, which is a really nice feature because condensation can be a big issue in wintertime. As well, I have a teepee style tent, so this tent costs a fraction of the price of the Nemo Tenchi and is still a very capable winter tent. Teepee tents shed snow and wind really well. The way you erect them is you stake out all the corners and then you put a pole right up the middle. It's a single wall tent, very minimalist, and one of the downsides with them is that you do sleep right on the snow unless you bring some sort of mat or ground sheet, but at the fraction of the price, great tent if you're looking to get into winter backpacking. Next, let's talk about things I keep in my jacket. And this is very important because these are things that are very sensitive to cold, so I keep them in my jacket so that they stay warm. And I have two nice chest pockets on my jacket here. First up, my cell phone. I keep that right on the left side there. And then on the right side, I keep my Garmin InReach. So I use an InReach Mini in order to communicate with people back home and friends, as well as an SOS device. So if I run into an emergency in the backcountry, I can press SOS and hopefully get help within a couple hours or sometimes a day or two if the weather's bad. As well, in my chest pocket, I keep a battery bank, so keep this nice and warm so I can keep my cell phone charged or any of my other electronics like my InReach or headlamp. And then inside the jacket, I have two big pouches. In one of them, I keep a Platypus soft water bottle. So I fill this up with a liter of water, keep that right in here so it stays nice and warm. And then on the other side, I keep my water filter. So I have a Katadyn Be Free that I bring with me. And I'll only bring this if I know that I can have access to running water. If it's a scenario where I'm boiling snow, then I'm leaving the filter at home. Then there's a bunch of gear that I keep on the outside of my pack. First up in this pouch over here, I keep the Snow Claw shovel. So this is a really cool device that I discovered last year. It's a shovel that is very small, bendable, but is very effective. I've used it to build snow walls around my tent, as well as to excavate snow down to the ground if that's how I wanted to set my tent up. On this right side, I also keep a saw. So I use a Silky Pocket Boy saw. This is an awesome saw. I've used a whole bunch of different ones over the last year, and this one has been my favorite. It just saws through wood very, very, very well. I also keep toilet paper, nice and accessible, as well as a water bottle. So I have here an insulation koozie for my Nalgene water bottles. This is one of the softer Nalgenes, HDPE material. And what I like about this is it's a little bit lighter than the hard-sided Nalgenes. I like bringing a Nalgene versus another water bottle because the plastic just does a lot better with the cold. As well, it can deal with heat a lot better. So if you're looking to heat up your sleeping bag at night before you go to sleep, you can fill this with boiling water and bring that to bed with you. That's just a nice little trick, but not something to rely on to keep warm. And then on the other side of the bag, I keep my seat system. I have here a stool from Decathlon So this is a really nice stool. It only costs $7, so really affordable. I like bringing a stool versus a chair for winter trips because I find they're just a little bit more sturdy in winter conditions. So that's why I bring the stool. And then I also have a Thermarest Z seat here. So I use this as insulation for the stool on my butt, or if I'm going somewhere that has a picnic table, I'll put this down there. As well, I use it to stand on and get changed sometimes if I'm changing footwear or pants or anything like that. The last item that you're seeing on the outside of my pack here is a foam mat. So this is a foam mat by Decathlon, closed cell foam. And I use this as extra insulation underneath my sleeping pad. So we'll get into my sleep system once we get into my pack. This is just a really nice extra piece of insulation. And I always bring this because even if it might not be getting that cold, if my sleeping pad does get a hole in it or deflates, then I at least have one other form of insulation between me and the ground. And that's super important from a safety perspective. The AMG 75 also has a really nice top pouch here. And inside of that, I keep my first aid kit, my Nightcore NU25 headlamp, and then a fire making kit. So I have an Opinel number 7 knife here. So I use this to shave wood off in order to start a fire, and then some fire starter in a little plastic tube, and a lighter. So I bring a lighter in my fire making kit as well as my cook kit. So 2 lighters because fire is super important in the backcountry in the wintertime. As well, I always keep a second battery bank just because the cold can really suck the energy out of your electronics. So I like having a backup battery bank in there, and my ditty bag. So toothpaste, lip chap, earplugs, that kind of thing. The last thing I keep in the top pouch is an emergency bivvy. So I like using the SOL bivvies. I have here their regular emergency bivvy, but I recommend getting the Escape bivvy because the Escape bivvy breathes a little bit better, which helps with moisture management, which will be a big factor in keeping you warm if you're in an emergency situation while backpacking or camping in the wintertime. Now it's time to dive into the pack, and I definitely pack my pack in a certain way. And the first thing that I pack in the very top of the bag is my sleeping bag. So a lot of the time in the summer, I pack my quilt or sleeping bag right at the bottom of the pack to bring the weight up into the middle, which is the way you're supposed to pack a backpack. In the wintertime, I like having my sleeping bag right at the top. In case I do run into an emergency, it's much more important to stay warm and get warm quickly. So I pack this so that if I have some sort of issue, I can pull out my sleeping bag, get inside of it, get inside that emergency bivvy, and hopefully stay warm until help can arrive, or I can resolve the issue that's happening. And for my sleeping bag, I have here the Thermarest Polar Ranger. So this is an awesome sleeping bag for wintertime. It has a comfort rating of -5 degrees Fahrenheit, and I've taken this down to -20 degrees Celsius and stayed toasty warm. It has a survival rating of -30 degrees Celsius, but I think it could probably get a little bit lower with the sleeping pad that I have because the sleeping pad is actually really warm. There's a couple of different features that makes this my favorite option for winter sleeping pads. First of all, it has armholes, so you can use the armholes to vent hot air if you're a little bit too warm. As well, you can use those armholes to read or do other things around the tent and not have to get fully out of your sleeping bag. The second feature that's really unique to it and that I love is the snorkel. So around the head, it has a snorkel system that protrudes out, and that is made of a synthetic material. And the thing that that snorkel does is manage moisture as well as keeps a bubble of warm air around your face so that your face isn't getting cold on those really, really cold nights. So we mentioned my sleeping pad a couple times here, and the one that I use is the Thermarest Nebair Xtherm. This thing has a 6.9 R value and is super warm. It's a toasty sleeping pad and also very light. It's by far the best warmth to weight ratio sleeping pad out there and also pretty comfortable to boot. I use a size large just so I have a little bit more room to move around, but you could also get the regular if you want a little bit more warmth management. Paired with the Decathlon sleeping mat, I stay toasty warm, insulated from the ground in the wintertime. The next thing that I have is something that I don't bring all the time, and that's an Enlightened Equipment Revelation Apex synthetic quilt. So I use this quilt if it's getting really cold. I'll drape it over top of the Polar Ranger sleeping bag, and it does two things. It adds a little bit of insulation. It's a 50-degree quilt and will take the comfort rating of the sleeping bag down to about -30 degrees Celsius. As well, it manages moisture really well. Instead of moisture getting trapped in the down of my sleeping bag, and down absorbs moisture really well, it gets trapped within the synthetic quilt, which dries a lot better and doesn't hold on to as much moisture. The last part of my sleep system, and one of my favorites, is the Trekology pillow. So This pillow is one of my favorites out there. It has a pad strap, so this goes around the end of your sleeping pad and keeps the pillow in place. I find that even more important in the wintertime when I have my sleeping bag hood on and I don't have my arms outside able to adjust the pillow in the middle of the night. So that's my sleep system. I think a sleep system is probably one of the most important aspects of winter camping gear. So hopefully you got a little bit of an idea of what it takes in order to stay warm and comfortable when you're winter camping. Next, we're going to talk about my cook kit. So I keep my cook kit inside of this Hilltop Packs Dyneema bag here. I think it's an awesome bag. I love that you can get custom printed stuff on it. Just really cool. I get a lot of comments out on the trail about that design right there. So inside I have a few different things, and I have different options depending on the scenario that I'm going out in. If I'm going out and I'm able to filter water, or I'm not going to be boiling that much snow, then I'll bring my Evernew 1 liter titanium pot. So this pot doesn't have a ton of volume if I need to be boiling snow, but it's 1 liter, so still pretty good size, and I'm able to boil water quite effectively with that. If I'm going to be boiling a lot of snow, then I'll bring my Toke's 2 liter titanium pot. Or if I'm going to be using the fire to melt snow as well or boil water, then I'll bring this pot. 2 liters is kind of the minimum capacity that I recommend if you're going to be boiling a lot of snow. You don't get a lot of water out of boiled snow, so you need to be packing a lot into the pot. A little bit of a hack: put water inside the pot before you fill it with snow. That'll help conduct heat into the snow and you'll melt your water faster. I also like this pot because it has a bail handle, so if I am putting it in a fire, it's a little bit easier to get out using a stick or something. And then I have 2 different stoves here. The first one that I have is the MSR Pocket Rocket Deluxe. So this stove has a regulator on it, which helps it perform pretty well in cold temperatures. So I'll bring this along if I'm going down in temperatures around minus 10 degrees Celsius. After that, the performance starts to really drop off and it doesn't do as well. But up until that temperature, this is a great stove, nice and compact, light, great burner, so it works really well if you're staying above minus 10 degrees Celsius. The other stove that I'll bring is the MSR Whisperlite Universal. So there's 2 aspects of this stove that makes it work really, really well in wintertime. First up, it has an inverted canister. So you put the canister on this stand here and then it's inverted. And why that's important is because at really cold temperatures, a lot of the fuel inside the canister is liquid. So you want that liquid to be flowing down and then through the tube to the stove. Then the second aspect of the stove that really makes it good in wintertime is because that fuel is liquid at cold temperatures, the Whisperlite has a heating coil. So there's a coil here that heats up that liquid, turns it into gas, and then the gas is what gets burnt by the stove, and the gas makes for a much cleaner and stronger flame. And I've used this stove down to minus 20 degrees Celsius and it's worked really, really well at those temperatures. I think it can go down even colder than that, but if you're getting down into really, really cold temperatures or at a really high elevation, then the Whisperlite Universal, and this is the universal version, there's 3 different versions of the Whisperlite, can also use white gas, and white gas is very, very effective at cold temperatures or high elevation. As well in my cook kit, just the last couple things here, I have my Toke's titanium spoon and then my GIS mug if I want to have some sort of hot beverage. I also keep my second lighter in my food bag as well. And then the last thing that I have in my bag is my clothes kit. So I keep that right at the bottom. And I'm not going to talk about my clothing system during this video. I'm going to create another video where I talk about the clothing that I hike in, as well as the clothing I wear around camp, because I think that's another very important aspect that I want to dedicate an entire video to. If you are excited for that video, then make sure that you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you get notified as soon as that video comes out. If you guys have any questions about this gear, I'd be happy to answer them in the comments below. Let me know if you're going to be getting out there and winter camping this year at all. I'd be very curious to hear how many of you are winter camping or have plans for winter camping this winter. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.